Welcome to a new Smart Money video, and today we're going to cover some keys that you need in order to start a successful business. If you were wondering what are some of the questions you should ask and what are the fundamentals that you need in place before you start a business or launch a new product or service within your business, then this video is for you. Please subscribe to the channel if you are interested in business, finance, and personal growth, as these are the types of videos we like to put out. So what we're covering today is two of the keys in order to start a successful business or launch a new product or service line. And they are market sizing and the economic engine. Now we're going to get into how do you do a market sizing exercise and what should you keep in mind, as well as what is the economic engine, how do you work that out, and how do you know if your engine is strong enough to produce a profit or not. We're going to finish off with a bonus tip on something to watch out for. Let's look at market sizing as your addressable market. How many people will possibly buy your product? This in itself is actually not tricky. It's as simple as, well, how many people do you think will buy your product? And essentially you should know that if you have been developing something or thinking of launching a service, you should know whether people want that or not. If you don't, take that step back and start to figure out, do people want what you're going to make? Now, the next thing you need to do is to figure out how many people require or need this product, and do they just need it once off or do they need it in a repeated fashion? For example, if you're making some sort of food product, people will eat that over and over and over, so you have a repeat purchase. If however it is a once-off item or a very rare or low frequency purchase item, then you have a little bit of a harder problem. So let's assume that it is a once-off purchase in a 3-year cycle for sake of making the next illustrations a little bit easier. So you look at the market and you think, there are 100,000 people who will need this particular product of mine. Now, you could just go along and say, oh, 100,000 are going to buy it in the next 3 years. But that's often not the case. I have run close to 300 or more such studies for large multinational companies. This is one of the things my own business used to do all the time. Estimate the potential demand of a new product or service. Now, the rule of thumb that I figured out from doing over 300 of these across different categories, and this is really important, is 1/3. Take 1/3 of it. So if you have 100,000 people you can address, assume that 30,000 are actually going to buy your product. Now, when I say 30,000 are going to buy your product, I mean if you make 100,000 people aware of your product, 30,000 will buy it. That may sound disappointing, but there's still a lot of money in that, and let's continue to work through the example. You can start to think about over 3 years, what would you expect? Well, if you were able to reach 10,000 in the first year, 10 in the second, and 10 in the third, that's 30,000. But it's more likely that your adoption is going to ramp up in a non-linear fashion. In other words, it won't be 10, 10, 10. It's probably more something like 5, 10, 15 to reach the total 30,000. And this is where you can do your first check. In year 1, 5,000 people buy your product. Is that enough to sustain your business? Is that enough to make a profit? And over the 3 years, if you take all of your estimated costs and resources and how much it's going to cost to produce the product, is that going to cover your 3 years expenses, that 30,000 people buying the product? If not, you need to change something. Change the costs, change the price, find a way to enlarge the market, and so on. If you're enjoying this video, please remember to hit the like button, as it really helps the channel out. Move on to the economic engine. Now that you know 30,000 people are going to buy it and 5,000 in the first year, you're able to say, okay, how much money can I make out of this? So you take your product. Let's say you're selling a widget, a widget for $10, and it costs you, your direct costs are $6, your direct costs. So that is how much it costs to manufacture the product, as well as any advertising, marketing, or shipping that is required. So $6. So 10 minus 6 leaves us with $4. That $4 represents the amount of money you have to cover your indirect costs and make some profit. You can now run the calculations and you can work out how much money you have for the year. So year 1, we know there are 5,000 people. So 5,000 times by the money that's left over that's the $4 per unit, gives us our total amount of money that we can expect to cover indirect costs and make a profit. So in this case, 5 times 4 is $20,000. $20,000 is not a lot of money. You have to now think very seriously, is your addressable market big enough? Have you chosen the right sector? You see, as soon as you take your addressable market and you multiply it by your economic engine, how much money you're going to make after direct costs are subtracted from the selling price, you realize, oh wow, this business actually is not going to generate enough money, because $20,000 is a very easy salary to earn. Why go through all that effort? Well, you go through it because perhaps in year 2 it is better, and we know that sales in year 2 get to 10,000. So assuming all the costs are constant, in year 2 then you would make 40,000. Well, is $40,000 enough to cover the other indirect costs? That might be accounting, it might be some administrative staff even. So you're possibly looking at still making a loss. So is 40,000 enough? What about in year 3? We're now addressing 15,000 people, and that would be 60,000 left over. Is that enough money? Still something to think about. 60,000, I think a lot of people within a 3-year career, if they work hard, can earn that much money. So is it worth running your own business and the stress and the hassle of it if you can make the same amount of money, actually a lot more money, just working a job? I say a lot more because 60,000 is before all the indirect costs. I assume there must be something else that is coming out your business other than just your own salary. So it helps us to work. The formula helps us to create a robust business plan that we can then take and move forward with. Now, if you put a simple 0 on the end, so instead of your addressable market being 100,000 people, it's 1 million people. 1 million people, we take it over the 3 years and we multiply by the third rule. That gives us 300,000 people. That means in year 1 we have 50,000 people, and we have a total amount left after direct costs of 200,000, and in year 2 400,000, and in year 3 600,000. All of a sudden this business starts to make more sense to do, and so it's very easy. Now we head on to the bonus tip. What is the one thing that ends up messing up a lot of companies? Well, it's capital. You see, once you've worked out your addressable market and you've worked out your economic engine, you're able to figure out what starting capital you need. You can look at it and you can say, well, if I have total costs, total indirect costs of 100,000, and I have 100,000 coming in, that's 0 profit. In other words, I actually don't need any capital. Well, that's not true. You do need some capital. You probably need at least a third of that 100,000 in cash flow, so that you have a buffer for when people pay late. If there is that set up in your business that people can pay late. So you need a buffer, you need some cash flow. If you're running at a loss, say you are able to make 50,000, but it's going to cost you 100,000 in a year, well, your capital then is not 50,000. You should probably take double and make sure that you overcapitalize, because at the end of the day, there is nothing worse than not having enough money to do and to run the business that you're trying to create. I hope that this has been helpful and thought-provoking today. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And do share this video with someone else, as together we can create an abundance.